General Manager of Missoula Community Access Television, inviting you to another edition of What's Up Missoula. This program profiles civic groups and clubs in Missoula. Today we're going to talk with Richie Rineholl. He's a local musician. He's come to talk to us about Bluegrass sessions that are being held at the Top Hat Bar in downtown Missoula. Richie, thanks so much for coming over. Before we got into it, I know that one of our production people, Garnet Christensen, went out and videotaped a band at the Top Hat last weekend, and we're going to run a little of this clip, and you've agreed to provide a little commentary over the clip to give the audience an idea about some of the elements of the folk music and what makes bluegrass music different. So if you guys are ready, feel free to run the clip of, and this is the Ravens band at the Top Hat.
This is more indicative of country music than the straight bluegrass.
Like this style of guitar playing with the guitar turned up, like...
It's called a resonator, a resophonic guitar, commonly called dobro. The reason it's called dobro is the original instrument was made by a company that was their brand name.
Oh, I see.
The Dopiro brothers, their brand name was Dobro. Just like a lot of things, it just took on that name. It's a Dobro.
Kleenex or Xerox or what have you.
Exactly.
I'm going to tell people this is you playing the mandolin. looking at a little clip, and that band is called The Ravens?
Right, yep.
And you're part of it?
Yeah, that's Tenley Holloway doing lead vocals, playing guitar. Tim Ishler playing dobro and fiddle and banjo. Steve Garr playing bass, and Roger playing drums.
Oh, yeah.
And it's kind of a new band. It's pretty fun. I've known Tenley for a long time. She used to play with the Hot Tamales. I don't know if you remember.
Oh, I do remember that band.
And we just sort of got together by default. We, Steve, the owner, wanted to do kind of an acoustic bluegrass type thing. Sort of hate to call it real bluegrass because real bluegrass music does not have drums, and most of the people don't even plug in. The kind of purpose of the art form is the sound of the acoustic instruments. Right. So as soon as you throw drums into the mix, it takes away that quality of the acoustic instruments. That's why most bluegrass bands, rather than putting a pickup on their instruments, they mic it. They use a microphone in front of the instrument to get that real natural sound.
The timbre of the sound,
exactly,
the resonance of the particular
And that's really a part of the music, is that just the actual sound of those instruments being mic'd up, as opposed to putting a pickup on it and then plugging in.
And the drums, you mean, because they're so loud, they'll probably knock out a lot of the,
and traditionally,
nuances.
In the old days, they never had drums in a bluegrass band. It was just the antithesis of the music. So, the purists, I guess I'm kind of got one foot in both sides. I have played in bands with plug-in. I don't have a problem with it, but if I'm going to do it. But if I do it, I tend to have a tendency to not think of it as bluegrass music. It's similar. I would think of more of as country music in the bluegrass style, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, let's talk, Richie, a little about the jam session that is being held at the Top Hat. It's every Tuesday. Mm-hmm. And you were thinking maybe about 6 p.m. I think it might be safe to ask people to call the Top Hat and talk to Steve about just when they get together. But that's one of the reasons I thought it would be nice to have a music person on the program. I saw this in the Independent, and that people watching might be interested if they like bluegrass music to play with other people that like it as well. Mm-hmm. Tuesday nights, give the Top Hat a call, Steve Garr. And I know you wrote a little bit about who is welcome. Mm-hmm. Because bluegrass is a particular art form, the people doing the jam session, they're looking for people that are interested in the bluegrass music.
Right. Guitar, mandolin, fiddle, banjo, bass.
Right.
That's pretty much, it's, it kind of depends on who's there. I know some people are sort of more open than others, but definitely drums, it's just kind of, there's nothing wrong with drums. I love drums, but in the bluegrass jam, it's just kind of not welcome. If you go there with a drum, probably not going to be very welcome to join. Although that's not to say that people are going to be rude. They're not. I've seen people sitting down playing drums, and everybody in the jam kind of cringing.
Right.
Because on the one hand, music is about enjoyment. It's the fun factor is what makes it. So, you don't want to just turn around and harsh somebody out and say, "Hey, get out of here,"
Right.
You don't want to do that, and for the most part, people are fairly polite,
Yeah.
But I think respect is a word. Respect for the art form, Yeah. So, and because of the music as an oral tradition, definitely the best way to learn to play the music is to go to a jam, Even if you don't really know the songs very much, structurally it's fairly simplistic type music in terms of, the chords. It's I wouldn't say easy, but it's simplistic, so that a guitar player, even if you are not familiar with the songs, most of the songs are fairly simple, so that you can sit there at the back of the jam and strum along, and that's the appeal that bluegrass has. Is not to say that all the songs are simple. They're not. There's a lot of complex songs, but
the root of it is kind of like it's a folk music. It's meant for people to join in, kind of. It's not like an exclusive music of virtuosity. So I guess you can get there with fast picking. And
there again, it's in the jam situation, the jam can get really big. If you're talking about a band, the traditional bluegrass band is a 5-piece band.
Yeah.
Banjo, mandolin, fiddle, guitar, upright bass.
Yeah.
That's the quintessential bluegrass band. Sometimes you'll see 2 guitars, but usually it's one of each of those kind of instruments. But a jam's a different thing. You know, it's different. I've been to jams where there's 4 or 5 of each kind of instrument, and it's this huge circle. It's kind of fun. You get this big wall of sounds coming out.
Right.
And traditionally, what you do is if it's a singing song, you know, the person that sings it, and then it comes time for the break or the solo section, and it kind of just passes around. That's about half of. The other half is what we call fiddle tunes, that are instrumental tunes. There's a huge bag of those, and traditionally speaking, it just goes around the circle, you know, and everybody takes their pass at it. If you don't want it, if you don't want your turn, if you don't not familiar with the tune, you can just pass it on to the next person.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, so that's kind of what the really big appeal is that you learn the tunes, and then it's definitely improvisational.
Right. Because you could learn the basis of it, and you could come up with your own interpretation of it,
Right.
different lick.
It's like jazz in a lot of ways, you know. Traditional jazz. I mean, there again, that's a huge basket. You know, to say jazz, you've got this giant thing. What is it? But just kind of traditionally speaking, you have the melody or the head of the song.
Yeah.
You play the melody through, and then everybody gets a turn to interpret their version of it, and then you play the melody, and you're out. Bluegrass is essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
You play the melody, whatever the tune is. You play the melody line, and everybody gets their turn to kind of improv on it. You know, sometimes it's hard enough. Sometimes the melodies are so cool that, you know, you just want to play that melody.
Right.
But you know, it's a challenge to challenge your skills at all levels. You know.
Oh, sure. And I just want to remind people who are watching, what we're talking about is an open jam session for bluegrass music at the Top Hat Bar, downtown Missoula. It's on Front Street. We're going to put the number up for you so you can see what number to call. You talk to Steve Garr down there if you want more information about it. And it's Tuesday nights. We're visiting with Richie Rineholl, who has been to the jam sessions, and he's agreed to be the spokesperson.
Yeah. Actually, and then after the jam, the Pinegrass Band, we're actually just a 5-piece traditional bluegrass band. We play after the jam.
Right.
Which usually gets going about 10:30.
So
yeah.
10:30.
Yeah.
Oh, so you're in that band as well as what
Correct.
we just saw the clip of the
Correct.
Ravens.
Yes.
And they're playing the mandolin as well?
I'm actually in Pinegrass. I play guitar.
Okay. Yeah.
I used to play mandolin a lot, but I got in situations with better mandolin players, so I just kind of put it aside. And the funny thing about the mandolin, I get to a point where I really enjoy it, and then all of a sudden it just starts seeming really small. It's like,
I was thinking that when I was watching. Like,
it just starts feeling really crowded. The walls are closing, and I got to put the mandolin down, man. I can't take it anymore. You know.
Brought out your fretboard a little with the guitar.
Guitar. You know.
Yeah, because a lot of mandolin licks, they are super fast, and I guess that's why
the scale is really short.
The fret is really close together because you can get in all.
Basically, what a mandolin is a violin with frets and double strings. It's the same tuning. It's the exact same scale.
So that's where it came
as it was
from.
Pretty much developed. You know, so that violin players could play this way and play chords and stuff. Like I said, it's the exact same tuning, same notes.
Wow.
It reads the same.
Oh, see, I didn't know that, but it makes sense too. When you see one, you just think they put it up to their
it's the same
shoulder, and there you are.
Everything's the same. Yeah.
See, that is kind of fascinating. I once did attend a lecture about folk dancing in America, and the guy that did the lecture, he said a lot of these folk dances came from court dances that settlers remembered from Europe. So, you know,
definitely.
The barn dance and what have you, somebody would say, well, I remember something I seen, you know, them doing. And when you mentioned that about the mandolin being a variation on violin, it almost seems like another thing, you know, where in the New World, people adopted that formal music, classical music of Europe with the violin and turned it into something else.
Well, there again, the mandolin that you see in a bluegrass band is a complete American invention. I mean, the mandolin was, I think, Italian, developed in Italy. I'm not sure of this.
Yeah.
But, you know, the classic mandolin that you see, we call it tater bug. It's got the round bowl, and, you know, it's a short scale. But the mandolin that you see in the bluegrass band was developed in the 20s by a Gibson company. And they changed the whole style of it. They lengthened the availability of the notes, and it just, partially because in the I guess in the late teens and 20s, that there was a real popular thing called mandolin orchestras. They had these big orchestras of mandolins playing classical music, because a lot of classical music reads, like I said, because it's the same as a violin. You can read, if you know how to read for violin, you can read the exact same for mandolin.
And you're picking out the notes rather
than bow, right?
Than bowing them, whatever they call it, pizzicato or whatever, when they pick the notes out. And before we started taping, you mentioned, I said, well, where did that name Bluegrass come from? And you said it was from Bill Monroe.
Correct.
From popularizing this form of music. Because like you said, reggae music, Bob Marley didn't invent it. But in this country, Bill Monroe popularized it, or brought together all the elements of people associated with that. And his band was called Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys.
Bluegrass Boys, right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, he, you know, before Bill Monroe, they had bands that had the banjo and the mandolin and the fiddle. Basically, they were just called string band. It was called string band music. Like if you see early records from the 30s, you know, that's what it says on the label. It says string band music, you know.
And that's why the drums, which so many people expect, is precluded, too. From its early roots, it was a string band sound, and a big drum sound wasn't part of it.
Well, and what makes the music what it is, it's an ensemble. Everybody has a part in the music, so that the rhythm section is not a drum going boom, whack, boom, whack, boom, whack. It's the interaction between the mandolin and the guitar and the bass. Everybody's playing a little different thing, but it all comes together and makes that rhythm. That's why as soon as you throw drums into the mix, all that becomes redundant, because
and it's overpowered by this one unifying voice.
The timbre, the tone of the instruments get overpowered by the thing. And don't get me wrong, I love drums. I love playing. You know, I mean, there's certainly, you know, the other side of the coin is, you know, how many kinds of music can you pick? Rock and roll, reggae, you know, all that kind of stuff. You got to have drums.
Right.
I mean, you have to have drums in music, because there again, it's part of the ensemble. It's part of that sound. With bluegrass, it's the opposite. The whole sound is the sound of the ensemble. You know, the mandolin, basically the mandolin's doing what a snare drum does. Chop.
Oh, yeah,
chop,
sure.
Chop, chop. So there again, as a mandolin player, as soon as you get a drum up there, he's like, hey man,
you're taking my job.
Get out of my room, boy. You're taking my job, you know? You know.
And there must be a feeling, you know, among people that really love bluegrass, that the public is just bastardizing it because they don't get it. That they'll see something like the clip we saw and say, oh, they were doing that old-timey fiddle music. I guess it's bluegrass.
Right.
And then,
well, it's certainly understandable. Sure, you see the mandolin, especially the bluegrass, you know, little curly cue deal, the bluegrass mandolin. And sure, why not? You could call it bluegrass music for all intents and purposes. It is, except that it has the drums in it. And a fine point, you know. I'm just saying that there again, it kind of comes down to respect. You know, if you respect the art form for what it is, traditionally speaking, bluegrass music does not have drums in it.
And about the vocal part, like for the jam sessions, and I'm going to remind people we're talking with Richie Rineholl, who has been who participated in these jam sessions. They're now being held at the Top Hat Bar downtown Missoula on Front Street. We'll put up a number at this point for you guys to call and talk to Steve Garr down there. The jam sessions are held every Tuesday. Richie is an invitation for vocalists. I hadn't thought of that. I was always thinking, well, they're
certainly,
instruments.
Definitely. You know, there again, a kind of common misconception about bluegrass. It's just pick, ping. No, really, at least 50%, maybe even more of it is singing. Definitely, singing is a very big part of the music. And but you know, and
I mean, is there a style? Would you say? Is there a bluegrass timbre? Should you have a accent?
It's kind of wide open. I mean, I'm certainly not a purist in that sense. That, you know, even in Pine Grass Band, we do Bob Dylan songs. I've even done a Beatles song in the bluegrass style. It sort of depends. If it fits rhythmically, if it fits the style, then why not? But certainly, you know, for someone that doesn't know the music, they're not going to immediately know a Bill Monroe number or Stanley Brothers or Flat and Scruggs. You know, that's kind of, it depends. You have the modern stuff. You have the Alison Krauss, which is, you know, very popular, and there's a lot of women, girls that learn those songs, and that's great. But yeah, you come to the jam, whatever, and it really depends on who's there. And it's kind of, like I said, it goes around in a circle. And it comes to your turn, whatever you want to play. I mean, I've heard them do Paint It Black, you know, the Stones tune, that's a Bluegrass tune, so, hey, whatever, you know.
That does seem kind of open. And so
yeah.
you're saying at the same time, you know, there's some tradition, it's not going to be so narrow, they'll be like, oh, you're out of order, out you go.
Well, it's a personal preference, and there certainly are those people that they just want to keep it the straight and narrow.
Yeah.
You know, myself, I can go both ways. I really appreciate and I like the old traditional, the old time style, but you know, I like the new stuff too. Music as an art form, it has to grow. I mean, certainly there are boundaries that everybody's boundaries are different areas. Some people have large ones, you know, like anything goes, man, you know, Leonard Skinner, Bluegrass style, whatever. And some people, their boundaries are very narrow. It's Bill Monroe, it's Stanley Brothers, or whatever, you know.
Right.
So there again, it's a personal preference.
Yeah.
You know, and the jam being, I mean, every week it's a little different. It depends on the people that are there.
Yeah.
And certainly I think that for the most part you'll find that people are fairly polite and fairly tolerant of things, you know. It's not like, no, we're not going to play that song, forget it, pal.
Right.
I've never seen that happen, ever. And, you know, I've heard, like I said, I've heard everything from Paint It Black to Bob Dylan, to Neil Young songs, to, you know, Joel songs, I mean, whatever.
Right.
As long as it fits, you know, if you got an acoustic guitar and you like to sing a song, hey, go for it. Go for it, man.
Tuesday nights. You know. All right, great. Well, Richie, thanks so much for coming by.
You bet.
I'm not going
Thanks for having me.
Beg the time. I'm just going to remind people we've been talking with Richie Rineholl. He's a Missoula area musician who's been going to the jam sessions at the Top Hat, and we're going to put the number on the screen there for you to call Steve Garr if you're interested in getting a few more details. It's for bluegrass music. If you've got an open mind and an interest in playing or singing, you're more than welcome to come to the Top Hat, call Steve to get the exact time. And also if you go on Tuesday nights, Richie's band, the Pinegrass Band, will be playing a little after 10 o'clock if you'd like to see them. If you know of a group you'd like to see on this show, give us a call at MCAT. The number is 542-6228. Thanks for watching this edition of What's Up Missoula. For MCAT, I'm Joel Baird. We'll see you next time. There, we made it to the